Number 1. Imagine being stuck in a space the size of a pickup truck with 8 strangers for days on end. That's how it worked. Old West stagecoaches were designed for 6 people, but the companies wanted maximum profit. The result: 9 passengers crammed in knee to knee with no way to stretch your legs. And the worst part came when nature called. There were no scheduled bathroom stops. Men had to hold it or use a bucket right there in front of everyone, including women and children. The smell after 2 or 3 days of traveling through the desert was something nobody forgot. Civil War veterans said they'd already smelled some terrible stuff, but that stagecoach stink was a tough match. Number 2. Traveling by stagecoach in the Old West wasn't just uncomfortable, it could wreck your health. The dirt roads kicked up thick clouds of dust that got in through every crack in the cabin. Passengers said that after a few hours, they could barely see each other. The heavy dust built up in their eyes, their throats, and especially their lungs. Doctors at the time documented cases of chronic coughing that lasted for months after a single long trip. Some travelers developed permanent breathing problems. In 1850s California, during the gold rush, thousands of people faced these conditions across the country. Wet bandanas tied over the face were the only protection available, but they only worked for a short time before they were covered in dirt. The funny thing is, a lot of people saw this as a minor problem compared to the other dangers of the journey. Number 3. Why robbing stagecoaches was the best business in the Old West. Think about it. A stagecoach hauling Wells Fargo gold, an unarmed driver, deserted roads with no witnesses. Black Bart figured that out perfectly and robbed 28 stagecoaches all by himself, never firing a single shot. The guy treated robbery like an investment. Minimal risk, guaranteed profit. And it wasn't just him. In the 1870s, outlaws realized stagecoaches were perfect targets. No escort, no fast communication, and the chance of getting caught was almost zero. Insurance companies started losing so much money, they had to respond. The solution? Put an armed man with a shotgun sitting next to the driver. That's how the shotgun rider was born, a role that still exists today in armored trucks. A curious detail: the phrase riding shotgun that Americans use when they sit in the front seat came straight from that era. Number 4. Traveling in the Old West was like playing Russian roulette with your luck. Stagecoaches raced along trails full of rocks and deep holes when a wheel broke. And that happened more than you'd think. The result was brutal. Passengers got thrown out like ragdolls, smashing into rocks, or getting trampled by panicked horses. In 1860s Wyoming, frontier doctors reported crushed bones, fractured skulls, and deaths on the spot. And the worst part, there were no seat belts, nothing to hold you in. People just prayed they'd make it out alive. And the stagecoach drivers, had one of the most dangerous jobs of the time. A lot of them didn't even make it a year on the job. Number 5. Keeping a stagecoach running in the Old West was a logistical nightmare. Each station needed rested horses, clean water, and enough hay to feed animals that were worked to the limit. The system required swapping horses every 10 or 15 miles, which meant a 100-mile route needed at least 40 animals ready and healthy at different points. A lot of horses simply couldn't handle the pace and died from exhaustion or dehydration, especially crossing desert territory where there was no grass and no water sources. Stagecoach companies spent fortunes keeping these stations stocked, sending supply wagons to places where nothing grew. It was a military-style operation right in the middle of the desert, and any failure meant passengers stranded in the middle of nowhere. Number 6. Think of the stagecoach like a syringe on wheels. Every stop in an isolated town was like injecting viruses the community had never seen. Cholera, smallpox, flu. They all rode for free right next to the passengers. The problem was simple. A sick person in St. Louis got on the stagecoach in the morning. 2 weeks later, an entire town in New Mexico was burying its dead. There was no quarantine. There were no tests. If you could pay the fare, you got on. And in that cramped space with the windows shut against the dust, a few hours was enough to infect everyone on board. Historians estimate that stagecoach routes lined up almost perfectly with epidemic outbreaks in the West. It wasn't a coincidence. It was the price of progress. Number 7. Have you ever hit that jolt on a bad road and thought that hurt? Now imagine that for 12 hours straight every single day. Old West stagecoaches didn't have real suspension, just leather straps that barely absorbed the impact. Every rock in the road sent a hit straight into your spine. Doctors back then documented something disturbing. Frequent passengers developed what they called stagecoach spine. It was basically spinal discs getting compressed way too early. People in their 30s with the back of a 60-year-old, but the worst part, nobody could see. The constant micro-impacts shook the brain inside the skull. Same mechanics we know today in American football players. Except back then, nobody understood why regular passengers ended up confused and forgetful. Internal organs took a beating, too. Kidneys and liver shifted millimeters with every pothole. It wasn't a trip. It was a non-stop beating disguised as transportation. Number 8. What was on that plate could kill you. At stagecoach stations, you ate whatever there was. Pork kept for weeks with no ice, darkened and smelling strong. Bread with green mold spots. Coffee made with contaminated well water. The rancid meat still gave you calories, about 250 per serving. But along with it came bacteria like salmonella and clostridium. With no antibiotics, your body had to fight on its own. Some people built up a tolerance. Others spent days with fever and violent diarrhea. Dysentery killed more people in the West than shootouts. The funny thing is a lot of people survived. The digestive system of those who grew up back then was different, used from childhood to food we'd throw away today. Number 9. Imagine going 25 days without really sleeping. That's what passengers faced on the route from Missouri to California. It was 2,000 miles of dirt road, dust, and potholes. The only rest came in seated naps crammed onto wooden benches that felt more like church pews. The stagecoach didn't stop at night. It kept going, shaking nonstop. The human brain wasn't built for that. After a few days, your mind starts messing with you. Shadows turn into figures. Unexplained sounds pop up out of nowhere. It's what scientists today call extreme sleep deprivation. Your body holds up, but your mind starts short-circuiting. A lot of passengers reported strange visions by the end of the trip. It wasn't madness. It was pure biology. Number 10. The stagecoach worked like a mirror of America back then. Inside the cabin, you had businessmen, well-off farmers, and their families. Up on the roof, along with the luggage, rode the passengers who paid reduced fares, poor workers, immigrants, and anyone considered less respectable. But there were people who couldn't even ride on the roof. Chinese workers who built the railroads and Native Americans were often turned away or forced to wait for the next stagecoach, even with money in hand. Some companies had clear rules banning certain groups. Others left the call up to the driver. The result was the same. The open road of the West wasn't open to everyone. Segregation was already happening on four wheels decades before the Jim Crow laws. Number 11. Traveling by stagecoach was a nightmare for any woman. Picture a cramped space with no ventilation, getting bounced around for hours right next to strangers. And here's the detail history books don't talk about.